I'm the unintended Saab maintenance man. We won't go into the reasons why I got the Saab, and there's many of Saab's stories, as many as you know. I'm going to change the transmission fluid on the Saab. Now, this is a 2008 Saab 9.3 Aero. The transmission is an AF40. This particular one has a B284 transmission. It is the 6-speed. So these instructions only apply to that type of transmission in the Saab. The tools we will use, we have a 1/2-inch ratchet wrench, a 3/8 drive, 10 millimeter extension, 13 millimeter socket, and we have 2 Torx bits and a hex. This happens to be a T40, this happens to be a T55, and this is a 12 millimeter hex bit. If you don't have one of these, it is actually possible to take a 12 millimeter bolt and use the head of the bolt as the hex. I also have an infrared thermometer in case I want to check the transmission temperature before I drain it and scald myself. This is a long funnel that we will use to put the 3 liters of fluid back in the transmission. The Saab workshop manual specifies to replace with 3 liters of fluid. Keep in mind, when the fluid is drained from the transmission, it is not drained from the torque converter, so we're not going to be able to refill the torque converter. What happens is we are only changing a portion of the transmission fluid, and as crazy as it sounds, Saab would recommend doing this 3 times. In that way, you actually refresh the transmission fluid. This transmission fluid is specific to Saab, and it has to pass certain requirements because the 6-speed transmission requires a transmission fluid that is not the regular Dextron or Mercron fluids. And the recommendations that I found was for the Titan ATF 4400, and on the back of it, it recommends for Saab cars. Saab 3309. I will further investigate that to make sure that's the right transmission fluid. But again, we are about to get into this. The filler plug for the transmission cannot be seen without removing the battery and the battery tray. While it is possible to see it, but gaining access to it, it just makes life easier if you remove the battery and the battery tray. Of course, after this job is complete, when you reinstall the battery, you'll have to reset your clock, and you'll have to put the ignition fob in the console twice. Put it in once, turn it around, so the key is recognized by the column. Taking the battery cover off is easy. These plugs just pull out. Put on the side, use your 10 millimeter wrench. Now, to remove the battery, they are clamped in, and down in here there is a 13 millimeter bolt. So we have to take that out to remove the battery. This is the clamp that holds the battery in. My battery has handles on it, which is a nice feature. Now, the battery tray is held in by 3 screws, and those are a Torx bit. The one on the back is at an angle, but I think I can squeeze the Torx bit in there enough to break it loose. I did. Now, oftentimes, because of where these are located, they will be really rusty, and you should put some anti-seize or some type of rust-penetrating WD-40, Croil, something on them, so if you ever have to take them out again, they won't snap off. Now, to remove the battery tray, we first have to move this harness, and it just pulls up off the battery tray, believe it or not. That was that simple. But now we have to remove the fuse boxes. Then our tray should just simply lift out. Oh, we have to disconnect. This is a switch to determine when the hood is open. Disconnect that. and our battery tray is out. Now what we're looking for is the filler plug, which is down here next to the shifting cable. This is the filler plug right here. And that is the T55 Torx that goes into there. Now, if this is covered with dirt around here, you want to clean that off. So when you open this filler plug, dirt does not fall down in the transmission. This transmission does not have a filter in it. So we will use the T55 to break that loose. This is supposed to be installed with a torque of 33 foot-pounds, so if it's been in there for a long time, it's going to take some pressure to get it out. And then it should come out fairly easily after it breaks loose. This is the filler cap. You can see that it has a rubber O-ring there. You should replace that O-ring when replacing the cap. That is the hole where we will be putting the 3 liters of transmission fluid. Just putting the cap on it so nothing falls down in place. Now we're going to go into the car and drain the fluid out. On the Saab, on this transmission, there is a level plug that has to be removed before you can remove the drain plug. The level plug requires the Torx bit, and the drain plug requires the 12 millimeter hex. Right here is the fill level plug, which is in the middle of the drain plug. Now, when this plug comes out, there may be a half of a liter which comes out of this plug. Just simply let that drain out. This is the level plug. This has a small O-ring on it. Again, that should be replaced. We are just draining out a little bit of the transmission fluid, which has to come out so we can gain access to the 12 millimeter hex. So now we put our 12 millimeter hex in there. The car should be level when this process is being completed. So we're just going to allow this to drain for a while until we get all the fluid out of it. This is what they call the fill level plug. You can see that this is a hollow tube that sticks up inside the transmission, and the fluid level, when you take out the small plug, the fluid will go down through that hole, but to drain all the fluid out, you have to take this out. There is an aluminum washer on here. It's recommended to be replaced whenever you remove and replace this plug. This gets torqued to 33 foot-pounds. And I will use a torque wrench to finalize that torque. And we're putting back in the small plug. This only gets torqued to 7 foot-pounds. The fluid that's taken out, to dispose of that, you must take it to your local auto parts store. Typically they will take motor oil, transmission fluid, etc. So that's what should be done with the fluid. We don't want to be pouring it on the ground, disposing of it in any way that shouldn't be disposed of. As a note, this transmission fluid, the Titan ATF 4400, there has been some controversy about what type of fluid this transmission requires. There is a GM part number recommended in the Saab workshop manual. That part number seems not to be available anymore and is supposed to be backwards compatible with some other fluids. The GM fluid seems to be available in Europe, but it can cost you about $20 a liter. This fluid, according to the manufacturer, the ATF 4400 is compatible with the Saab 3309. Again, there's still some controversy about the 3309 being used in the 6-speed transmission. I will follow up on that because I want to make sure that I'm not going to cause undue harm to the transmission. Each one of these containers is 1 liter. So we will pour all 3 of those into the fill hole. So now we're going to slowly pour the oil in. The fluid that came out of the transmission is certainly not as clean as this transmission fluid that's going in. And again, this does not replace all the fluid in the transmission because there's still fluid remaining in the torque converter. Okay, we finished pouring in the 3 liters of transmission fluid. And after that drains out of the funnel, we'll remove the funnel. We'll put back in the filler plug cap, then put the battery tray, the battery back in, and we'll take it for a test drive to make sure that it's shifting smoothly. No problem with the shifting.
Nice.
Goes through all the gears fine. Hey, that's another Saab story done.